Hello, you guys. Welcome back to the channel. I'm a little bit nervous for today's episode, I'm not gonna lie. This is going to be a podcast. Weird. Hello if you are watching on YouTube, and thank you for joining if you are listening on Spotify or Apple Music. I actually have something typed up. I usually kind of just fly by the seat of my pants here, but I have something typed up, and that's for you guys' benefit, so I don't have you here for like 3 hours. Let's dive into this. So like I said, this is gonna be a little bit of a different video than you're used to seeing on the channel. It's mostly been unboxings and beauty-related stuff, and I've been on a little bit of a different journey. So if you're new here, my name is Tori, and whatever has led you to click on this video or podcast, I'm so glad you're here. Some of the things that I'm going to be talking about are things that I have buried down deep, and I'm honestly embarrassed to share. Some of these things the people closest to me don't even know yet, but I just keep hearing this phrase, be vulnerable. The only testimonies that have spoke to me were the raw and vulnerable ones. They made me feel like I wasn't alone in the search for something real in this life, and that I wasn't the only one who had made mistakes and had regrets. I'm gonna try to keep it together, but I'm most likely gonna cry in this episode. It's very personal. And every step that I've taken has led me to where I am today. And it's taken me a while to get here. So here goes nothing. This is my raw and vulnerable testimony of how I finally found my way back to Jesus. When I was young, I would go to church with my parents on Sundays. I went to Sunday school sometimes. Other times I would sit in service with my parents. I was born quite a bit later than my siblings. 2 older sisters and my older brother. My closest sibling was my brother, and he was 9 when I was born. And then I was an aunt by the time I was 7 years old. My mom used to sing in a gospel group, and I would go with her to almost all of her singing engagements and practices. I knew that she was singing about the goodness of God and the story of Jesus, but I was a kid and I didn't fully understand everything. But to me, my mom seemed like Wonder Woman. She was always helping everyone, even if it stretched her beyond her limits. I never understood why she couldn't say no to anyone. I remember wishing as a kid that I had more one-on-one time with her, but as I've come to understand what God is calling us to do here on earth, it makes a lot more sense. She just has a giving heart. Then as I got into junior high and high school, I started getting into athletics and we got busy. We seemed to go to church less. Our church was undergoing some pastoral changes, so that played a part, but I guess worldly things were taking up more of our attention. About 8th or 9th grade, boys started coming into the picture. I was getting noticed, and I liked getting noticed. The more I got noticed, the more I felt like I was doing something right. Vanity always played a big role in our family. Whoever looked the best, whoever was the most fit, whoever was making the most financially seemed to get the most praise. This is no hate to my parents because this was a trait that I'm sure was passed down through generations. So they were just doing what had been taught to them. But that doesn't mean it doesn't take a toll on a person. Anytime I wouldn't be done up to the nines or have no makeup on, I seemed to get asked if I was feeling okay or told that, oh, you don't look like you feel good or you look tired. Even though that was just my bare face. I started thinking as long as I looked the part, I'm okay. But that was just a mask. So I started seeking male approval by always having my hair and makeup done, trying to stay fit, and pushing the limits little by little of what my dad said I couldn't wear. Oh, my dad. We butt heads a lot, but it's probably because we have some very similar characteristics. I used to think that he was unreasonable and we could never see eye to eye on things because he was old school or something. I had witnessed some things in my childhood that made me hold a lot of anger and resentment towards my dad. I've since forgiven him, but that was a process and also another story for another day. That hostility I had towards him probably fueled a lot of the rebellion in my teenage years. Heck, even in my 20s. And early 30s, if I'm being honest. So back to high school. I dated boys, snuck out with my friends, and did things I shouldn't have. But I was still in some sports. I had to deal with a lot of bullying in high school, mostly from girls, even some teachers. Then when I was 16, I started dating an older boy that was already graduated, in a band, smoked cigarettes, and had wild hair. I knew that this was exactly the type of guy my dad wouldn't want me with, which made it that much more enticing. I dated that guy for 5 years. There were good times, but I compromised a lot in that relationship. I believed a lot of lies. I was easily manipulated, and I formed some bad habits during that time. Of course, in the band scene, there was drinking and smoking, not just cigarettes, which led me to quit athletics so I wouldn't fail the drug test. There got to be a time when we were smoking during the day, during the night. We were probably high more than we were sober. And I think we did it to feel something, but it just left me feeling numb and empty. There were times that I would catch him texting other girls, and he would spin some lie that I would eventually end up believing because by the end of the story, I was somehow the bad guy or at fault. But then there was that day. He always kept his laptop in his bedroom, and I needed to look something up, so I opened it, pulled up the web browser, and began to type. But as the recently visited websites popped up, a website I didn't recognize popped up. So I clicked on it, just to confirm that it was indeed what I thought it was. Yes, it was one of those sites. I had never seen one until that day. I was sick, so I confronted him, and yet again he made me feel like I was the weird one and it was completely normal. So when I was alone, I began going back to that website and watching some of those videos. I would compare myself to the women in those videos and wonder why I wasn't enough for him. When I had given all of myself to him, why he still needed to watch those videos. I felt extremely insecure all the time. I was just a young girl who wanted to feel loved and accepted. But that time of watching and comparing, it formed an addiction to watching those videos. It left me feeling ashamed and just dirty. You would normally think it's mostly men that struggle with this kind of addiction, but the more you open yourself up to hearing others' testimonies, the more you realize this addiction plagues men and women. It was an addiction that I struggled with for a long time, but by the grace of God, I've overcome that addiction. But for anyone that is trying to convince you that it's normal to watch those videos, it's not normal. It's not normal to feel like you need to watch those videos. It's not normal to alter your brain into thinking that lifestyle is okay. I don't care what anybody says, it's not normal and it's not healthy. To add more fuel to the fire, that boyfriend and his friends would steal DVDs, movies, for those of you that are too young to know what DVDs are, from Walmart when they were on tour or just together and wanted to be funny. Shove them down their pants. I would sometimes be with while they were stealing, and I would laugh it off and tell them they were stupid. They miraculously never seemed to get caught. So then it got me thinking, and I decided to try it. And I got away with it the first time. The second time, I got cocky, and I did it when I went to the store with my mom. She was off shopping in another area, and I was in a different area. Crest white strips. That's what I stole, both times. But the second time, I thought I had gotten away with it, and I was heading to the exit with my mom when an undercover cop came and grabbed my arm. Talk about embarrassing. My mom was in shock and tried to tell them they were wrong, but I just stood there, fear welling up in me. Why did I do it? Maybe to feel something? Or maybe it was a cry for help because no one knew what I was actually struggling with. And at that point, I wanted out of the hole that I had dug. I wanted out of that relationship because I knew neither one of us were good for each other, and I knew that I needed to make a change. So shortly after that incident, I ended things with that guy. And it was hard because everyone, even people in my family, thought I was being cold to him after 5 years, but no one knew what I was actually struggling with or even how he manipulated me to always side with him. And I knew if I talked to him or heard him out that I'd just end up staying with him. So I ended it the only way that I could see out, and I packed my stuff and left. I do still feel bad to this day about how I had to do that. But my prayer for him is that he's living a full and flourishing life and that he finds someone that's good for him and that makes him a better man. And I thank the good Lord that he knew who I needed in my life at this time of major change. It was someone I never expected, the biggest blessing in my life and the one who can ground me when I'm feeling crazy. He is now my husband, but at the time, he was the friend I didn't know I needed. Keep it together, Tori. I felt safe around him. And I never had to guess how he felt about me. He made me a priority in his life, which I admit sometimes I seen as clingy, but I also didn't know what being made a priority felt like. There's no one I would have rather went through this crazy life with than him. We went through our days of partying with friends and being wild and taking crazy trips, but when it was time to settle down, I knew it was him that I wanted to do life with. We were finding our way through life, and I was working full-time as a hairstylist and makeup artist in a high-end salon. We got married in 2016, moved into a house of our own, and eventually started our own little family by getting our dog and then finding out we were pregnant with a baby boy towards the end of 2017. My brother and I got baptized in 2017. I was so excited for my brother because he had completely turned his life around. If you knew what he had come out of. Oh. But that's not my story to tell. Basically, I got baptized because I knew I should. And I was praying almost daily because I knew I was supposed to. I was reading a daily devotional because, again, I knew I should. I started to try to read my Bible, but I didn't get far. But I wasn't doing any of these things because I wanted to. I was doing these things to check a box. Then my husband and I had our son in 2018. I knew the track I wanted to be on for my little growing family. I still knew that we needed God in our lives. We were going back to church on Sundays when my son was a baby. We had him dedicated when he was about, I think, 8 months. And we felt like we were doing all the right things. I had always had some kind of job to make my own money, and I liked having that level of independence. I never in a million years thought I would want to be a stay-at-home mom, but my son melted my heart, and I knew there was no way I could leave him. So my husband and I decided that returning to the salon full-time wasn't the answer, and I quit. I would still do some family and close friends' hair on the side, but I still felt like I wasn't doing enough to help financially. So then I started seeing women just like me making an income from home, joining these MLM type businesses and sharing about them on social media. I could do that, I thought. So I signed up with a company that I really knew nothing about. It was called It Works. It did not work for me. I dumped money into getting started, but I couldn't get anything going because it was extremely pushy and salesy, and that's just not me. But then I started seeing a different kind of MLM company, makeup line. Now, that seemed more my speed. With having the hair and makeup background already, advertising the makeup was a breeze, but it was expensive. I've always been a bargain shopper myself, so it was difficult for me to back this line completely because I personally wouldn't have spent that much money on makeup. Then entered pharmacy. It was another beauty type MLM company, but the prices were actually reasonable. So I started doing Facebook Lives, doing my makeup, and showing people what it could look like. Before long, women were signing up under me and buying makeup and skincare from me. I was shocked that this company seemed to be working for me. The first paycheck I received from pharmacy after things had gotten rolling was $800 for the month. That was a lot compared to hardly making anything from the other companies. I remember falling to my knees and just thanking God that he had brought something into my life that I could actually stay at home with my son and make an income. I had started a YouTube channel, and I'd been making an effort to grow that to help financially as well. Posting a lot about pharmacy helped my channel grow quickly because it was a new company to the US, so people were looking it up to see what it was all about. I also became an affiliate with a hair company called Head Candy during this time. So the ball was getting rolling, and I guess I was pursuing this role called being an influencer. Being an influencer always looked appealing because of the glitz and glamour. Getting dolled up and getting paid to do it. Sounds too good to be true, right? Well, everything with influencing made my life so busy that we didn't have time for church anymore. More and more pressure seemed to pile up on my shoulders, and the person people seen in front of the camera was not the person I was at home. I was becoming short-tempered, angry, and so busy all of the time. And then the comparison set in again. I would see all of these other influencers that looked so perfect and put together. Perfect bodies, full lips, not a wrinkle on their face. Plastic surgery and Botox seemed to be the norm. I had always been more flat-chested. When all the other girls were hitting puberty and filling out in high school, I was just over here like, hey. It always made me super insecure, honestly. I couldn't fill out tops like other girls. So once I got to this point in my life and I had the means to make it happen, I started looking into getting a breast augmentation. I did end up going through with that surgery. It definitely gave me a confidence boost, and I was able to fill out tops that I never could have before. And then I started wearing a lot more showy things, just because I could. I was gaining more attention on social media because of how much of my body I was showing. I was feeling great about it for a while, until just that wasn't enough. Then I started getting lip filler and Botox, and I was feeling great about myself for a little while. I told myself I was doing this all for me, when really, deep down, I was doing it to try to keep up with the other influencers and to find a sliver of happiness. But nothing stuck. The happiness would fade each time as the newness faded. I thought if I was successful and making a lot of money, I would be happy. So I kept grinding, and eventually I was making at least $10,000 a month and up to close to $40,000 in 1 month on TikTok. You can imagine the size of my ego at this point. I did this. My hard work paid off. I did the dang thing. Ugh. Then I had to ask myself, now are you happy? No, I was miserable and lonely because I had pushed everyone away. I went on frivolous trips to the beach just to buy temporary happiness, but none of it worked. I grew to resent my family. I resented my husband, my #1 supporter. I started thinking that he was holding me back and that I could be more successful without him. The world was numbing me. It was desensitizing me and building this hard outer shell, around my heart so that I couldn't even receive love if I wanted to. I didn't trust anybody, and I refused to let anybody help me. I was at the end of my rope. I didn't know where else to turn. I thought, God wouldn't want me back. I'm a mess. I'm unlovable. But that is not God. That's the enemy planting seeds of doubt. One day, a video came up when I was scrolling on TikTok. It was a Christian creator. I hadn't let myself watch any Christian content in so long, but for some reason I stayed on that video and I watched it. She read a passage from a book called The Cure. What if God isn't who you think he is, and neither are you? And this is what she read. This is supposed to be God speaking. What if I tell them who they are now? What if I take away any element of fear? What if I tell them I will always love them? That I love them right now as much as I love my only son? What if I tell them there are no logs of past offenses, of how little they pray, of how often they let me down? What if I tell them they are actually righteous right now? What if I tell them I'm crazy about them? What if I tell them if I'm their savior, they're going to heaven no matter what? It's a done deal. What if I tell them they have a new nature, that they are saints, not saved sinners? What if I tell them I actually live in them now, my love, my power, and nature at their disposal? What if I tell them that they don't have to put on masks, that they don't need to pretend we're close? What if they knew that when they mess up, that I'll never retaliate? What if they were convinced bad circumstances aren't my way of evening the score? What if they knew the basis of our friendship isn't how little they sin, but how much they allow me to love them? What if I tell them they can hurt my heart, but I'll never hurt theirs? What if I tell them they can open their eyes when they pray and still go to heaven? What if I tell them there's no secret agenda, no trap door? What if I tell them it isn't about their self-effort, but about allowing me to live my life through them? That was exactly what I needed to hear at that very moment. Everything I thought I knew about God was judgment and rules you had to follow. I never felt like I would measure up to that God. But luckily, that's not God. That's the picture the enemy paints of God so that people will run from him. It says in John 12:47b, Jesus says, "For I did not come to judge the world, but to save the world." Yes, there will be a day of judgment, but Jesus came as a savior, not a judge. And sure, I've experienced church hurt and condemnation from so-called Christians, but it was God's love that brought me home. Your condemnation and telling people what they're doing wrong is not what's going to bring them to God. It's God's kindness. In Romans 2:4, it says, "Or do you show contempt for the riches of his kindness, forbearance, and patience, not realizing that God's kindness is intended to lead you to repentance?" I had no desire to repent for anything I had done until someone took the time to show me God's kindness. I had always considered myself to be a free spirit, and I wanted to be wild and independent and free. Girl power. But I never felt more trapped in my own mind than when I was walking astray from God. Nothing about my life made sense. Doing whatever I wanted wasn't bringing me happiness. Nothing this world had to offer was bringing me peace. When I finally surrendered to the Lord, I told him, whatever's left, you can have it. Come into my life and just wash it all clean. I give up. I'm done running from you. And I just felt this warmth, and I felt him say, now you're ready. My whole life, I had been back and forth with my walk with God, and I had never fully been committed. And I just felt at that moment that it was like something changed. I have never felt more free as I did that day. I started reading the New Testament in my Bible, and it was like coming up for a breath of fresh air after drowning for years. My eyes were open, and I could finally understand how much love and patience the Lord has for me, for all of us. And yeah, I had to give up certain things from my old way of living, and I'm not making near the amount of money on social media that I was before, but I still have this peace in me because I know that God will provide what we truly need. John 14:27 says, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." And in John 15:11, it says, "I have told you this so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete." That true joy and peace that so many people are looking for, it's staring us right in the face, and the world is making us blind to it. Everything you're sitting here thinking while watching this video, trust me, I've already thought of it. Why share your whole deep, dark past with anyone who chooses to watch this video? What if someone you know sees this? What are people going to think of you? Yeah, I've thought of it all, which is why it's taken me so long to film this. The Lord has been asking me to film this and put this out there, and I've just been putting it off. But as all these questions and scenarios were racing through my head, God put a video in my path where a woman was talking about, you're responsible for your obedience, not how somebody feels about it. Oh, that was a gut check for me because I was thinking about how certain people in my life would feel about things I would say in this video. I even thought, what if my kids see this video someday? And my prayer is this, that they would know that I'm not perfect either, that I've messed up too, and that they would feel comfortable enough to come to me and ask questions or talk through the hard stuff. Because there were times I wished my parents would have been more honest with me about the hard stuff. I don't blame them. I know they were just doing what they felt was right at the time and guiding me the best way they knew how. But I went to so many other sources for the truth because I felt like I wasn't told the whole truth a lot of the time. And I didn't go to my parents to talk about the hard things because I had them on such a high pedestal that I didn't want to disappoint them. I always felt like I needed to do more, be more. That word has been prevalent in my life, more. Like I wasn't doing enough. But what I wasn't hearing was the first part of what God was saying. I made you for more. God is using our stories to complete his story. We just have to choose if we're going to answer the call and be obedient. I do plan on making this a series where we talk about faith. I don't know how often the series will be posted, but I will keep you guys posted on that. And if you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for sticking around. And for anyone that's watching this video that is feeling lost, broken, lonely, like they're not enough, I'm so sorry for what you're going through. And I'll be praying that you find relief and that you can hear God through it, because he's always there knocking, asking to come in. But he's a gentleman and he waits for you to invite him in. For anyone that needs prayer, drop it down in the comments or message me on one of my social media platforms and I would be happy to pray for you. Everyone has a testimony. Be open to hearing other people's testimony, because even if mine didn't connect with you, somebody else's might. But thanks so much for listening, guys. God bless. I'll see you next time. Bye.